Welcome to the very first episode of the Subsoil podcast, where we explore innovative perspectives on sustainable soil management across Europe. In this episode, we are joined by Alexandre Cottin from Ver de Terre, an organization deeply committed to promote regenerative practices and holistic approaches to soil health. Together, we'll discuss the implementation of an integrated landscape approach in Normandy, combining regenerative hydrology, conservation agriculture, and sustainable forestry. Normandy's agricultural and forestry sectors face growing concerns about soil degradation, compaction, and pollution. What are the key issues affecting Normandy's soils and subsoils today, and what are their root causes?
Thank you for the question. Normandy's soils are primarily clay soil, silty, and are under multiple pressures. First of all, erosion and compaction due to intensive tillage, heavy machinery degrade the soil structure, reducing the water infiltration, and so on. The clay-rich soil are prone to surface crusting, also increasing the runoff, the sediment loss. You can be up to 10 tons per hectare and per year in some cereal field sediment erosion. The second point is the organic matter depletion. So monoculture and bare soil between crops reduce the carbon stock. Normandy's soils have lost almost 30% of their organic matter since the 1960s. So this is a lot, and this weaken a lot the water retention and the nutrient cycling, forcing higher fertilizer use, and it's a vicious circle. Third, the pollution and the biodiversity loss. The main pollution in Normandy is the nitrate leaching due to livestock manure and synthetic fertilizer, and Normandy has several vulnerable zones under the EU nitrate directive. And then the other one is the pesticides residue, as glyphosate, for example, that disturb soil microbiome and reduce the natural pest control. The last one is the climate variability, like with the drought, like increasing a lot in frequency, and the intensive rain, which, drought, cycle of drought and floods, basically. So the root cause, to be short, three. The first one is the short-term economic pressure, like priority, putting the yield first over the soil health. Then the fragmented policies, like you have agriculture from one side, water policy from the other, forestry policy from the other side, and all is managed separately without communicating. And the third one is the lack of awareness about soil structure, biology, about soil in general. How do they work, and why they are so important for us.
Thank you very much for your insightful answer. Secondly, you advocate for a water-soil plant systemic approach at the territorial and watershed level. How does this work in practice, and why is it more effective than isolated fixes?
This is one of the purpose of the Subsoil project now, connected different stakeholders and everything. So the approach works basically the same. We need to connect tools, because tools alone are not enough. We need an integrated strategy that mimics natural ecosystem. So first, hydrology mixed with soil structure. Like one of the main aspects is slow down the water by restoring hedgerows, grass strips, restoring wetland, for example, reduce the runoff, infiltrate water and store the water by a key line design, for example, in regenerative hydrology, infiltrate the water by no-till agriculture and compost amendment. There is a lot of different practices, but we need to mix them together. The second one is the plant diversity. So bring back agroforestry and forestry in agricultural fields, basically. Polyculture also bring back cattle and livestock in cereal production system, for example. And the second one on plant diversity is use of cover crop. Basically, plants are the only being that are able to transform the sunlight into energy for living. So we need to cover all the earth with plants. Basically, that's simple. Maximize the photosynthesis. And the last part is the watershed scale coordination. We can't have a field approach, neither plot approach for forestry. We need to connect the landscape, and the watershed approach connect the landscape through the water, basically. So for me, it's one really interesting scale to work on the landscape approach, the watershed scale. So you can map the critical areas, erosion of spot, for example, buffer zone, and try to work on collective action on the watershed level. We are starting to doing that in France, as every cooperative regenerative approach, it takes a lot of time and energy to bring all the stakeholders together and to obtain results on the short, medium, and long term. To finish, why does this approach work? Take time, but it works because of the synergy, like healthy soil or more water, so less growth stress, higher yields without more inputs, so less contamination, and so on and so on and so on. Then the resilience, diverse landscape, buffer climate extreme. We are seeing right now that monoculture is not the way buffer the climate variation we are facing every day. And the last point is the cost saving. Farmer will spend less on fuel, for example, for no-till agriculture, fertilizer with the use of cover crop, on erosion repair. If you lose 5 centimeters or 2 centimeters of your soil every year, that will last 10 or maybe 100 years to recover, well, better not lose it. So use all the tools to implement this kind of practices at the landscape level. I don't say it's easy, it's really hard, but it's really effective when the cooperation is working.
Thank you for your answer. A final note, implementing systemic solutions requires coordination between farmers, policymakers, scientists, and local communities. Why is concerted management essential, and what are the biggest obstacles right now?
Well, let's go after the last question. Actually, I was saying cooperation is really hard, and this is true. It's time consuming, but it's a really strong approach. So first of all, soil and water don't respect property line. What one farmer does affect the whole watershed, no? I mean, a drop of water go wherever the slope take it. So we can't have an administrative way of managing the territory with borders and everything. It doesn't work that way. We share resources. The farmer pesticide use impact the downstream drinking water, for example. The forester clear cutting will provoke or trigger mudslide on the neighboring crop, or it can occur a lot of different problems like that. The solution is a watershed council, as in France or in Brittany, for example, that will work on this kind of topic and try to bring all the stakeholders around the table so they can be more, I will use that word, empathic one to another, so understand the other, so it won't be a conflict, but you try to find a solution, a win-win solution for everybody. So the collaboration, first on sharing resources, second on the knowledge gap. Basically, we need to work all together to have a common understanding from the forester point of view, the farmer point of view, the policymaker point of view, the academic point of view, every stakeholder point of view. And I bring one more time this word because I think it's central, the empathy, understand the other, really understand the other, to be able to work together and maybe not work for your own good, but for the good of the territory, I would like to say. And the third one, you can help the cooperation by economic incentives, basically. Subsidy, payment, eco scheme, for example, carbon credit, water agency grants. There is a lot of different subsidy scheme or economic incentives to be able to coordinate this kind of watershed council or territory approach. And I would like to maybe 3 short obstacles. The first one, the distrust between different stakeholders. Farmer won't trust like a policymaker, for example, or it will be harder for a farmer to trust a policymaker than to trust another farmer, for example. The second one, it would be the fragmented funding. Like you will need to have to pick funding from different type of schemes of project to go on with the coordination on the watershed level, for example. And the last one, and the more important, will be the short-term thinking. We are talking on soil, forests, on water. These are resources that you need to manage on the long-term thinking. And right now, everything is managed on the really short-term thinking, like 4 or 5 years between every election. This is a really huge obstacle on territory development and cooperation. To conclude a little bit on the approach and how to implement this kind of landscape approach, I would like to share 3 key to success. I think the first one will be to search for local champions, basically. Farmers already transition to no-till or agroforestry or new kind of innovative system, economically viable. We need to show other farmers that, okay, they will at least have some money with what they do and share the story. We go back to the trust. I mean, another farmer will trust a farmer. He won't trust will trust less an advisor or policymaker. If you bring the champion farmer that is able to show actually that it is working on the territory, it's much more impactful. Then transparent data show how healthy soil bring higher profit for forester, for farmers, for policymakers, for everybody on water level, for example. And then the last one, and the more, I think, difficult one to conclude, but it's a key to success, flexible policies. Allow adaptive management and allow policy to be bring a fractal approach, I would like to say, allow policy to be easy to go from a European policy to a really regional or local policy and to jump from one to another, reinforce the approach and not slowing down, basically, with too much administrative or stuff like that. And this is the more complicated point to find out. Really rigid or really flexible and everybody can do whatever they want, or really rigid and you can't move a finger without having to fill 200 pages of paperwork. So this is the three key of success to implement actually a successful landscape approach.
Thank you. I speak now on behalf of the subsoil project. I completely agree that everybody should be more empathic and think about long-term instead of short-term results for soil health. And thank you, Alexandre, for sharing your insights and experiences with us. Your perspective highlights how essential it is to view soil, not as an isolated resource, but as a living system connecting to water, plants, and finally people. And thank you again to our listeners for tuning in to this first episode of the Subsoil podcast.